This is TWiT.
Today we've got the former head of go-to-market for OpenAI, Zack Kass, worked at OpenAI from 2021 to 2023. It's great to have you. He currently talks to groups and consults with industry about AI and the change that is a-coming. Hi, Zack.
How are you?
It's great to have you. Why did you leave OpenAI? Just out of curiosity.
It's not a story that I used to tell very often, but my parents got sick.
I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. I'm more willing to tell it now than ever. You can decide if you want to keep it in here. But it occurred to me that I kept talking about this future of abundance and the increasing importance of being human and community. And I wasn't actually honoring my, ultimate code, and then said, okay, I grew up in Santa Barbara, by the way. So moving home also.
You went home, basically. Yeah.
I went home for some other compelling reasons. So I moved home, and my parents are okay now, which is great.
Oh, that's fantastic news.
Wonderful.
Yeah. The story ends well. And I met my now wife.
Even better.
Yeah, so it's, you
don't have time to have a wife when you're head of go-to-market at OpenAI, I would guess. Wives, what's that? Life, what's that? Why did you, maybe a better question would be, why did you join OpenAI?
Well, I think that I don't think I could have come up with a reason not to. So many of my friends thought it was a head scratcher because it didn't have a thing to sell at the time. The GPT-3 had like maybe $2 million in revenue at the time.
It was really early in the public.
We had just released
vision.
GPT-3. Released GPT-3, and Peter Welander, the head of Applied, the VP of Applied, pinged my old boss, Lucas Bewald, now the CEO of Weights and Biases. And Lucas said, listen, there's one guy who's ever sold, large language models successfully that I know of, and it's this guy, and they introduced me, and sort of the rest is history. And I would have swept the floors. Like I sort of knew. I didn't sort of knew. I knew what was going on. So when people are like, "Why did you join?" I was like, "How could I have? How could I have not joined? I probably would have done that job for free."
You have said, would you call yourself an AI accelerationist? You've said AI, as I just said at the beginning of the show, is the most significant invention ever, practically.
I think it's probably fair to label me an accelerationist. If I'm not willing to call myself that, then I don't think I'm willing to stand by my belief that, I studied history at Berkeley, and if you study history, you realize that the world just gets better all the time. And then if you study computer science, you figure out why. And, like all of the reasons that we should be worried about technology, I get, but like, it is true that technology is the single thing that consistently moves the world forward. And, I certainly believe in its power to continue doing so.
So Reid Hoffman's new book just out, he starts off with a taxonomy of AI thinking. There's doomers, gloomers, bloomers, and what's the fourth? So doomers are the people who think it's going to destroy us all. Gloomers are the ones who say, don't forget about environment and all this stuff, you bozos. Zoomers are accelerationists. And bloomers, which is Reid, is people who do think there's some concerns and some controls, but the benefits are going to be great, and let's plan them and see them grow. So in that taxonomy, Zack, where would you put yourself? Zoomer or bloomer?
Here's my issue with Bloom. So here's my issue with these things. Obviously, no Zoomer, unless they're a psychopath, is like just disregard humanity.
Right.
So I think like it's a nice taxonomy because it's like evenly divided. But like in reality, Reid puts himself exactly where everyone would want to be.
Yes.
I'm a little bit of all of the above, depending on my mindset at the moment. Sometimes I'm a doomer. Sometimes I'm a psychotic Zoomer. I feel like let's just let it
back
go.
And forth. Yep.
Let's just let it go and see what happens. You think that's a nutty point of view, Zack?
No, but what I'm going to say here is like someone like Reid has sort of, I have a lot of respect for Reid for obvious reasons, but Reid has like taken some pretty strong positions in the past on things like, for example, Donald Trump, and said like, this is a person who's going to make the world worse. And I actually don't give enough credit to politicians anymore of robust economies to actually like make the world worse. I think that the problem now is, can we like get ourselves out of a lot of situations that I think technology can solve for. So what I mean by this is like, the easy thing to say is like, I'm a bloomer, and what we should do is just like carefully manage AI, but that just introduces a bunch of excuses for special interest and puts us in like this, like a new set of issues around, policy and the EU is going to experience this very soon. I also don't think we should run rampant with this thing. I mean, there should be some policy, but I think it's so easy to say, oh, we need to, control for all these things, when in actuality, we're fast approaching a world where I think the free market ends up solving so many problems that the government promised to solve a long time ago. And that's just going to be one of these weird things where people wake up and go, wait a second, why do I pay 50% into a system that's actually just gatekeeping abundant education, abundant healthcare, et cetera?
So you believe that AI is going to solve these problems, not just the free market, but AI itself is going to solve these problems?
I think that technology solves problems. I think that if you look back long enough, you realize that almost every problem that we've ever faced is not solved by policy, but in fact solved by innovation. Like what actually ends up happening is we just invent tools that make us more efficient, and then over time, these tools sort of make what used to be a luxury a commodity, and then the world just gets better. Right? Like driving down the cost of water, driving down the cost of food, driving down the cost of the internet, driving down the cost of electricity. These are the actual things that move the world forward. And the lower the inference cost gets on AI, the more abundant AI gets, and basically the more distributed it gets. And that's my take on broadly technology. Fusion energy is like, I think, the great unlock to world peace, quite honestly. Like abundant energy leads to abundant foodstuffs, leads to abundant water, leads to just like, suddenly people are like, why are we fighting? We live in truly a post-scarcity world. This is how the world works, by the way. I don't think this is like a super hot take.
Don't you worry a little bit, though, about the dangers of AI, or are you not worried about that at all? We talked yesterday, Steve Gibson did a whole show on AI jailbreaking. And there's not an AI out there currently that hasn't been jailbroken, which means there's not an AI that hasn't been used to for instance, create malware. Or his example, I said, well, what? So big deal. His example is, well, what if you were able to use an AI to create a toxin that we never heard of before, we had no cure for?
You can't anticipate every possible bad thing that any human
more
being can imagine to use with a machine. We're stuck with that.
You cannot
fact.
protect. Yeah, there's no AI safety is an illusion, it seems to be. Do you agree
or disagree? Ask the Pope and the printing press.
So, again, I think it is very easy for people to point at these like outlier events that could be caused by technology. And for every outlier event that technology can cause, there's a solution to that event that technology will create. I mean, measures and countermeasures is this like proud tradition that AI will observe just like every other technology. And just the same way that the cost of an attack on a bank has just declined every year.
Yeah.
Because banks are like, oh, we figured it out. Like we like know how to stop these things now, and we know how to make sure that we don't get taken for a bunch of money. The reality here is, for every toxin that's going to be created, someone's going to come up with an anecdote to that toxin.
All right.
Well, they will only if the incentives are there to do so. So if you think about the application of algorithms and AI to social media, for example, you have a situation where there are millions of people who are completely captured by TikTok and they rearrange their lives around it. There are other examples that are sort of outside of AI, like video gaming. There are people who literally play video games until they die, oftentimes in Asia, just completely captured by these things. And this would be solvable by technology for sure, but there are no incentives for the companies
There's
to
no financial
actually
yeah.
solve those problems, because it's not a problem for them. It's not a problem for Meta that people are addicted to its social networks. See what I'm saying? So this is a problem that we have with incentives. I mean, I think it's reasonable to say that advanced technologies, and probably AI is another example generally as a category, make a lot of things worse and a lot of things better at the same time. And it's all about the incentives to make things better. If we profit or we benefit from people's lives being kind of messed up, then their lives are going to be messed up.
Yeah. again, I'm just going to take the other side of this, which is like, if you could reinvent the internet, you know, uninvent the internet, you wouldn't. Social media is one of these like blights of the internet, but it's a social experiment. And what's I think fascinating about all these things, if you had looked at the United States in 1950, your safe assumption would have been that we all were going to die of alcohol poisoning.
Yeah.
And like people have such incredible recency bias. Like they're willing to look at social media and be like, there's never been anything worse to humanity. And by the way, I think it's an incredible blight. I don't use social media. I have someone on my team do LinkedIn and Twitter for me. Fine. It's a cost of doing business for me. But the reality is, what we know is that it doesn't make us happier, and humans actually default back to our happiness function. This is why you're seeing an entire generation, despite the fact that every alcohol company wants to sell you alcohol, Mike, there's a new generation behind you that's like, hey, I don't want to drink that much. And you're going to see this with social media. For every measure, there's a countermeasure, and things revert back to the mean. And my point is simply, let's create optionality. Let's create a world where people can do whatever they want, and actually trust that people in the end sort of align to their own best interest, which actually it turns out is time with friends and family and physical community. And we keep coming back to that place, which is why we're creating more and more better alternatives to the internet all the time. Concerts have never been more popular. Sporting events have never been more popular. Theater has never been more popular. Like all these offline events are sort of resurging because people are like, hey, you know what? I actually don't want to doom scroll. I don't want to drink, right? Like these things, this is happening already.
We're talking to Zack Kass. He is the former head of go-to-market for OpenAI. He's a consultant, and his new book, when is the book going to come out? It's called The Next Renaissance, AI and the Expansion of Human Potential.
End of March.
End of March. So it's done. You finished writing it.
Now I just sit there and regret everything.
Well, tell me about it.
Yeah, Jeff has some experience with that. The subtitle is The Next Renaissance, AI and the Expansion of Human Potential. You're very bullish about AI. You say, thanks to the coming emergence of artificial general intelligence, this chapter in our species story will be marked above all by a massive surge in human potential and productivity, which will unlock profound advances in science, technology, health, education, robotics, and the political economy. I love it. Let's be optimistic.
Zach, what's your definition of AGI?
Oh, that's a funny one, Jeff. I don't know.
Yeah, it's kind of vital to this discussion because nobody really ever defines it.
You know what's interesting is it's the one thing that I wish we hadn't even mentioned in the book, but like at the time, it's a marketing term. It's clearly a marketing term. We shouldn't call it anything else. I consider it human intellectual equivalence. That's probably what I would call it, human intellectual equivalence. And honestly, we're probably there.
If we're not there, we're awfully close, especially if you take a look at the reasoning models. It's remarkable.
Jan LeCun says we're lucky if we get to, in the near term to be a cat.
But Jan LeCun has died on this hill. I don't think you could walk him off this position. I mean,
I think he's right. I think he's absolutely right. I think that until it gets a sense of reality and real life, and knows that when a ball falls off a table, it's actually still a ball. It's not human intelligence.
I think it's reasonable, though.
I don't think a cat can create a video. I'm just not sure that that's right at all.
Oh, if we write the right tool for it.
This is an argument that we're going to hear a lot on this show over the next few months and years until AGI actually is provably here. And then Jeff will have to say, well, I guess I was wrong.
Zach, so a cat. So what? Go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, a cat can't make a video, but an AI robot can't play with a ball of string. So I think it's reasonable that.
But which is more useful?
But that's
not
to
the
true.
cat.
Mike,
the string is way more useful.
We could program a robot to play with a ball of string. We certainly you
could make a robot simulate playing with a ball of string,
but it's not playing.
Does it enjoy it the way a cat does? But my point is the problem with AGI, I think, obviously, is that AI is already way better at humans at a whole bunch of things, and nowhere near as good as humans at a bunch of other things. So,
fine.
The math is impossible. You can't basically say, well, in general, on average, we've reached AGI.
That's why you're right, Zach. The term is difficult.
It's just a marketing term. It's a marketing.
Let me ask the other challenging question, which is, as I'm curious of your experience at OpenAI and what happened there with the whole board kerfuffle and everything else, the question of safety, the definitions of safety, And it's always struck me that the doomers have kind of ruined the definition of the word, because they overblow that too. Oh my God, we can destroy mankind, and talk about P-doom and all that. Where did you see yourself in the culture of OpenAI around those questions of doom and safety?
None of this is going to surprise you. I mean, you just have me. By the way, have me back when something goes terribly wrong to shame me, I suppose. You know what? Even then, I'm going to die on this hill, Jeff. And here's my only point. If someone's like, how are you so sure this is going to go right? If you believe the world's going to get a whole lot worse, the onus is on you to prove why. Because we crawled out of caves once. I mean, where we have come. Like,
these days, I want to go back in, but keep going.
See, I know you're tongue in cheek, but I think there's something so pernicious about the idea that we are somehow regressing. Because in fact, the reality is today is the best day ever to be born, and tomorrow will be.
I agree.
But Jeff, I think your point is like an interesting one, which is a lot of people hearken back to these romantic days of old, when in fact we have made so much progress from the time when, my dad's favorite, in Kennedy. Oh, I wish we still had Kennedy. Yeah, well, we had a bunch of other things that were pretty messed up.
Well, that's why I don't buy P-doom.
Okay.
Actually, that's why I think that that's an egotistical effort by certain AI boys to say, I'm so powerful I can destroy mankind. That's BS. And I think mankind is smarter than that, and we'll figure this out.
Look, that's what I said. It's not going to surprise you. I totally agree.
Okay.
And I think if you believe that the world is going to end, you have a major onus to prove that we are going to rebuke a lot of like you'd have to reverse an incredible amount of historical precedent to actually believe that.
One of the things you do since you've left OpenAI is you consult with companies like Coca-Cola, Morgan Stanley, the White House. What do you tell them? If I were an executive at a big corporation, what do you tell them about how they should prepare for this new AI-driven world?
The advisory business we run spends time with a lot of different governments, all democracy, well, mostly democracies in the world or U.S. allies. And we also support a lot of Fortune 1000 companies across sort of policy, science, and applied, and sort of the breadth of, how the technology is going to impact them. We work with a group that focuses on their social security. And one of the questions they're asking is, when are people going to retire in the future? And actually, does the retirement age make sense in a world where technology is so easy to use as it's getting easier? Can we actually wean people into retirement instead of slamming the book shut on their working chapter? So, we touch sort of everything. What we try to do is point to trends and interesting events on the horizon that give people some way to ground where things are going. Because for most of the boardrooms and the executives we work with, it's just whiplash. I mean, it's so overwhelming.
It is for us. I can imagine what it is if you're trying to run a business in this.
That's exactly right. So a lot of what we're trying to do is just make sense of the technology vis-a-vis whatever, $100 billion company they're running and whatever multi-trillion-dollar market they're in, so that they can actually apply it in simple ways instead of it feeling like they've gone to plaid, like some Spaceballs reference where just everyone's holding on for dear life because the ship's just moving too fast.
It's a challenging world for all of us, and I think the biggest challenge at this point is even understanding what's happening. Do you feel like you understand what's happening, Zach?
Well. That's a great question.
It feels fairly unpredictable to me. I mean, I agree that the arc of technological history bends towards good things, but there's also a few bumps in the road along the way, inevitably.
Okay, so from a scientific standpoint, I think it's actually pretty clear to understand what's happening. I mean, we were building what we observed early on. Boris Power, the head of research engineering at OpenAI, coined this term of unmetered intelligence, which is how we explained what we were building towards to executives that were exploring OpenAI. And unmetered intelligence is like a thing that is a term that I love to use. It's like, free intelligence. The path to that makes sense to me, totally. how humans respond to it doesn't no. I
Unpredictable.
I cannot tell you. And one of the things that we study in the next Renaissance, and one of the things that I study at UVA, and one of the things we talk a ton about, is this new divergence between a societal threshold, what do we want a machine to do, and a technological threshold, what can a machine do? Because these things used to sort of happen in parallel. There was a convergence and a symmetry between these two things. We invented something out of necessity and we used it right away. And then we started to have this divergence in this post-scarcity, post-barbarism world. The obvious best example is nuclear power. We invent nuclear power and we go, oh, we have enough coal. We don't want to run the risk of a nuclear reactor exploding, so let's just shelf this technology. And of course, we regret that now. But it's very interesting to consider that the future is actually not going to be informed by what a machine can do. That question won't become interesting in a world where machines can do most things. It's going to be informed by what we actually want that machine to do.
Yeah.
And societal thresholds that we are willing to cross become the most important thing. And so that's where actually a lot of our time is now spent on the research side and on the advisory side, helping businesses figure out, do their constituents actually want this thing?
I know you got to get a plane. I'm going to ask you one last question because we got to let Zach go. I'm sorry, Jeff. DeepSeek kind of sent a shock through the AI industry. Sam, in an AMA on Reddit, said we were on the wrong side of history. What's your reaction to what happened with DeepSeek?
I got kind of lucky because I read the DeepSeek paper in May 2024 and started talking about it to people. And then I got invited to UBS's Greater China Summit in Shanghai in early January and spoke about it there. Because my message has consistently been, these models are converging. Their frontier will lead, but it's not. There is a clear commoditization happening at the research level, in part because the inference costs are just driving down so far so fast. And so I got a bunch of points when that came about, and then a bunch of people called. And my answer is really simple, and this is I think where we can leave it. There is a huge difference between DeepSeek R1, the model breakthrough, which I will remind everyone is open source. It's clear improvement in the technology. We should consider it a win insofar as it's challenging the norm that the frontier model costs a lot. And DeepSeek the app. And DeepSeek the app is hugely problematic and something that we should actually seriously concern ourselves with respect to national security.
Because it exfiltrates everything in China.
Yeah, I mean, the CCP has requirements around all app developers. I mean, I've never downloaded a Chinese company app. TikTok, right. Shein, Temu, RedNote. None of these apps should be downloaded by a US user, quite honestly, simply because the CCP gets all the data. It's not even that you don't have to trust the app developer. It's just kind of a risky position. But the model R1 is a huge win. And we should all celebrate it in a world where everyone's clamoring for more ecologically friendly AI and more fair and distributed AI. This is a great signal that, in fact, we're not going to live in a technological hegemony.
It confirms in some ways your optimism. Go ahead, Mike.
You use Perplexity. I think you're a pro user, right? And one of the models they use now is R1. And I
used it this morning. I was talking with Paul Thurrott. He says, I was watching TV. He's in Mexico, and the president of Mexico said something about changing the way we vote, but I couldn't find the news story about it. I asked R1. He asked, by the way, Copilot, Gemini, and ChatGPT, and all of them said, hey, we can't talk about elections. A lot of safety there. R1 had no problem with it and gave me a very nice summary of all of
I grilled it about Tiananmen Square and all this stuff, and it
don't
just
ask
gave me
about
all the right
Square.
answers. No, it's fine.
Zach has a flight. My point. We got to let Zach go. He's got a
all
flight.
Right. Hey, Zach, it really is a pleasure. We'll have you back soon when you have a little bit more time. The book, The Next Renaissance, AI and the Expansion of Human Potential, comes out in March, and his website is zackkass.com, ZackKass.com. Thank you, Zach. Make your flight.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Travel safe.
Looking forward to coming back and we can talk about all those things that are going right and wrong.
Yes. All right. With any luck, there won't be too much of the latter.
See you guys.
All right. Hey, it's Leo Laporte. I hope you've enjoyed this little clip from our programming at twit.tv. For more, visit our website, twit.tv, or subscribe in your favorite podcast client. There's also a link somewhere down there.